multimedia.
Is it live webcast?
Mm-hmm.
And recording?
You're Welcome to Lansing Online News Radio. This is Bonnie Buckaroo. We're here at LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. Down in the bowels of Lansing Community College, which is on break this week, so that means that Bill and I came pretty close to having to break into the building.
High security down here.
It is, but at least I think the security guard was pretty bored. Otherwise, he was happy to have something to do.
There's not a lot goes on down here when there's the students.
I know. I was surprised. I knew there was something up when I could roll right up to a parking spot right in front of the building and get in, so that's exciting. Today is one of those first nights, though, that it's not too bad with the weather. We're happy to enjoy a somewhat moderate evening. Our first guest this evening, I'm assuming that you have challenges with the weather coming up. Our first guest tonight is Laura, and do you pronounce that Hilu? Hilu? And she's with the Folk Festival, and that's coming up, and I thought you could maybe tell us a little bit about the Folk Festival.
Love to. Yeah, we're kicking off at 6 o'clock on Friday, and we've got just about 21 hours worth of programming throughout the weekend in downtown East Lansing.
Wow.
It's an amazing event. And I just want to tell our listeners that we opened with a cut from one of the performers, Leroy Thomas, who is Zydeco.
Oh, I was. We can't hear it here, so I'm not sure what it was you were playing. Zydeco's great. So what cut were you playing? Do you remember?
Yes, it is Your Turn to Lose.
Your Turn to Lose. A poignant song.
A little upbeat revenge song.
Yeah. A lot of that goes on in Cajun music, I gather.
There's a lot of it goes on in the Cajun culture.
Yeah. So this is, you can give us a little bit of history. This started with the Great Lakes Folk Festival.
That's right. This is our 11th year producing the Great Lakes Folk Festival in its current format in downtown East Lansing. The MSU Museum has been producing this event in downtown East Lansing right on the heels of the National Folk Festival, which a lot of people remember we were lucky to host here in 1999 through 2001. And that event travels around the country for 3 years with the hopes that an event will replace it. The community will rally and will kind of replace it with one with a similar model, which is just what we did. And it's been fantastic, the support we've had to keep this going.
I wasn't sure that was going to work because it's a big undertaking, and I didn't know whether the...
Well, funding obviously is always a scramble, isn't it?
It is. It's a year-round undertaking, really, to plan this event. So we have curators and staff at the museum who are working at this pretty much. We'll take a few weeks off after this folk festival, and then we'll regroup and begin on the next year. And we've had a lot of support, really. It takes a pretty complex formula of, sort of ambitious grant writing, a lot of generosity from the university, from the city of East Lansing, which underwrites the music program. A lot of sponsors who donate, whether it be cash or services, to keep this going.
And you do, the event is free to anybody who wants to come, but then you do also pass buckets so people can just throw a few dollars into the bucket, that kind of thing. So use every strategy you can.
You got it.
Yeah. Can you give us an idea of some of the named people that who are folk aficionados they might recognize?
Okay, sure. Well, it's always a really eclectic event musically because we really try and showcase the diversity of music that comes from different cultures or distinctive regions, communities, churches. This year, just on Friday night alone, we have Leroy Thomas and the Zydeco Roadrunners who are going to kick us off Friday night at 6. We've got some Ethiopian music. We've got music from Iran. We've got polka.
Oh, polka. Who are your polka people?
Demi Anderson, and the International Polka Hall of Famers.
Whoa.
Yeah, they're coming to us from Minnesota, and they do Slovenian-style polka, and also I believe this is our first yodeling polka group.
Uh-oh.
So you'll get to hear some of that alpine yodeling.
I DVR'd a bunch of polka on a channel the other, and I think I've actually seen this group. But it's always fun.
Well, he's been around for a long time, and he got his start with Frankie Yankovic. So
Did he really?
He comes from a pretty good polka pedigree, I would say.
See, my family.
Polka pedigree. Can you say that again?
Probably not.
Pretty good.
My family was a big fan of Cleveland style polka, and we looked down our nose at Frankie. I mean, it's hard to be a polka aficionado, but I am.
Cool. I love it. Yeah. We've got Indian music. We've got Hasu Patel, who plays the sitar. We have Claire Lynch, who does bluegrass. We've got some Piedmont blues, and we have Joaquin Diaz, who does Dominican merengue. And that's all just Friday night.
I love merengue. It's such a nice, easy, simple dance to do. That's great.
What is, in the past there's been themes. Is there a theme for this one?
That's right. So our theme this year, we are kind of doing an adaptation of a program that we did with the Smithsonian this summer at their Folk Life Festival, which happened around the 4th of July. And this year for their theme, they wanted to honor the 150th anniversary of the founding of land-grant colleges and universities. So that's what they did, and Michigan State University was a part of that. And so they called that campus and community, and they really wanted to look at the way that communities and universities work together to identify needs, to solve problems, to advance knowledge. And so that's what we're going to do, kind of a reinterpretation of that at the Great Lakes Folk Festival, specifically, of course, focusing on Michigan State University, some of the innovations and the research programs that go on there, as well as a few maybe sort of lighthearted looks at campus lore and tradition.
So will there be opportunities for sort of like workshops and seminars along with?
That's right. That's right. In addition to our music and dance stages, we're going to have what we call the Legacy Stage, which is kind of right in the center of the site on Abbott Road. That's what we call a narrative stage, where we'll have a lot of presentations and sessions of people presenting on the research that they do or the programs that they oversee. A lot of informal sort of question and answer type sessions.
One of the things I always like, of course, and I'm looking at the lineup of food vendors. So what are some of the highlights?
Well, just as we do with the music, we really try to showcase the diversity of authentic, exquisite traditions as interpreted in foodways. So we've got everything from some Southern barbecue from the American South. We have Middle Eastern food. We'll have Greek food, some Asian food. Did I say Middle Eastern?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And our just fine homemade root beer from Tyler, Texas. That people always look forward to.
That is really good.
Yeah.
I view it as medicinal. I mean, root beer, I think it does. It settles your stomach. It's wonderful stuff.
I always, of course, have to stand in line for fried bread, which isn't really traditional Indian food, but it's become traditional Indian food.
They did have a Native American stall there a couple of years
ago.
Yep,
they'll be back too.
They will again?
Yeah, the Anishinaabe.
Yeah, is it traditional or all?
Except, fried bread was a kind of a derivation of food that spun off from powwows. And powwows is relatively new thing in Indian history. Yeah. Maybe the turn of the century.
I was reading the old books from America Eats in the 30s, and they were talking about how to make pemmican, and you can tell why it's not on the menu. Your dishes, leave that sack of suet for a year and a half on the ground. I don't think so. No, I don't think the Board of Health is going to be real happy with those kinds of things. They've redone the menu apparently.
Now, is there any logistics problems this year because of construction?
Well, there are some projects going on in downtown Lansing for sure. So yeah, we have jogged over just a little bit to the west. And if you were at the East Lansing Art Festival, we'll have sort of a similar layout. So we'll be a little bit on Albert, but then mostly up Abbott, all the way from Grand River up to City Hall.
Now, when does the festival end? You gave us Friday night's roster.
That's right.
It goes all the way through Saturday.
Saturday from noon to 10:30, and then Sunday from noon to 6.
Okay. And can you give us some highlights of some of the people who will be playing on Saturday and Sunday?
Sure, I'd love to. Well, most of our artists play anywhere from 2 to 4 times. So if you miss them, if you miss them on one location Friday night, chances are you can catch them someplace else on Saturday or even Sunday. Who else we have coming in on Saturday? We have a Hungarian children's folk dance ensemble. They're going to be doing a couple of demonstration sets on the dance stage on Saturday. We have just a real high-spirited, upbeat group, old-time string band called the Freight Hoppers coming to us from the Carolinas. I think people are really, really going to love them. We have an Armenian kanun player, a stringed instrument. Era Tapuzian is coming in on Saturday.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the things I saw here, maybe I've missed it in the past, but there was I think we can say this, a beverage tent.
That's
Is
right.
that something that's been
It's
part
been
of
a couple years.
Okay,
the Lansing JCs are running that.
I didn't either.
So they call it Taste of the Great Lakes, and they'll have some
craft
mostly
craft
Michigan
brews.
craft beers.
Oh,
and a
that's
few
cool.
wines.
That fits with the folk ethic, doesn't it? Yeah.
It certainly is.
Now, are there any locals playing?
We have our Ethiopian artist from or Temesgen, who people may have seen performing at Altus.
Oh, okay.
He's going to be performing throughout the weekend.
Wonderful.
And Era Toposian, the Armenian Kenyan player, comes from Metro Detroit.
Now, where can people go to get all the details so they can plan their visits?
Well, you can check on our website. It's museum.msu.edu or greatlakesfolkfest.net.
Great.
You know, one of the things that's interesting too is there's a marketplace, isn't there? And I know that's
Absolutely.
real popular. You sell items that folk life, folk style
That's right.
items. So you can have that again this
We
year.
will. That's really taken off for us in the last couple of years. We have a lot of tradition bearers who we work with who might be Native American basket makers or textile fiber artists. And in the last few years, we've identified some what we call green artists, or people who are working with recycled and upcycled products. And those have been really fun.
Well, American Indians have always been looking in green.
Exactly.
Baskets, woodwork canoes.
I don't remember too many of the, the production lines.
Yeah, until they started selling trinkets on Nakano Island.
Right, and the down in the Southwest with the blankets by the side of the highway. With the trinkets that came from Mexico. So, yeah.
This looks like it's going to be fun again this year. It's an event that I look kind of forward to every year, and we have friends come in.
I think it's great that East
Well,
Lansing's been able to keep it alive because that was the whole point. But I kind of kept my fingers crossed because it's quite a challenge to put on something that's
Well,
amazing.
it's a free event, but it's not cheap.
Yeah, that's right.
Definitely,
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into producing something like this to make it a success.
Well, yeah, the musicians are paid too.
That's right.
At least a stipend of
that's
some
right.
sort. They don't come for free.
They're
You have to pay travel. You have to put them up.
Yeah, that's one of the bigger expenses. And we always identify artists that are so invested in sharing their tradition. They really consider this educational outreach in a way and sharing their tradition. So it's a lot of fun for them too.
Well, thank you, Laura, for joining
Thank
us.
you.
And I hope you will be back next year to tell us about the roster for next year.
All right.
Wonderful. Thank you very
We'll
much.
probably see you out there, but you're going to be a little hairy about that. It's got to be 3 days of a lot of work.
It's a lot of fun.
Now, transitioning in our discussion of all those food items, we're now going to introduce Holly Hamill from the Allen Street Market, our wonderful local urban market here in Lansing, Michigan, which I think this is the time of the year where everything is coming on board, isn't it? I mean,
Oh yeah, it really is. It's starting to burst out these last couple of weeks in particular.
yeah, now the tomatoes are in.
Peppers are showing up, things of substance. Yeah, and lots of color. I'm noticing lots of beyond that early green that we always are so happy to see. Lots of colors are showing.
Yes.
What's the weather? How has that had an impact on it? Have you noticed it?
I think so. I do. I think that at first it was, oh well, gee, it's hot, but I think it was so enduring that we were noticing people coming, and often we've created a space where we hope people come and stay a while and have a good time and meet up and visit, and people seem honestly to have come still, which is great, but conduct their business, buy their produce and scoot home. I think it's worn people down somewhat, and we're so glad it seems to be. Who would have thought we'd be getting a break in August?
Right.
Yeah.
I was
And what about your growers?
The growers have had some challenges, as we've heard all over the state and all over the country. There have been some growers who, we have our lineup and registration, know who's coming and basically what they're intending to plant, that in the early spring. And several growers have not been able to hit the time that they normally would have joined the market because of, some delays.
The drought.
Yeah, because of some
The heat
day
stress, I
delays.
think, is as bad as the drought in some cases. I looked at the corn over there on campus, and it's often so much of it is just short. I mean, it's tasseling now. Whether it will ever silk is dubious because the timing on that is so tight. And we've had days of stillness where there's not enough wind to get the pollen moving and that sort of thing. It's really, some places I know have talked about how they've had to plow under 1 or 2 plantings of sweet corn. So,
Oh, yeah.
have you seen much sweet corn yet?
Actually, sweet corn showed up a couple of weeks ago. So a few
good.
vendors have it, and it's just divine.
Oh, I'll bet. I bet. Yeah.
Sugar content's really high this year. There are some things that
Oh, that's
sugar
right.
content.
It's
in
very
them.
sweet. You're right.
It's almost. I mean, can you say it's almost too sweet? It
Yeah,
really is
yeah.
sweet. I've never had sweet corn this sweet in my whole life.
Well, they've been breeding those new bicolor varieties for sweetness, and I guess when you get that drought on top, it really
Concentrates the sugar. I think it must.
Now, you said you had a couple new vendors this year. You don't have very much turnover, so.
We don't. We have a space that's actually protected geographically by streets and buildings and fences. And so as we've grown through the years, this is our 9th year, but as we've grown, I would say 3 years ago, we maxed out our capacity. And so our policy is that people are certainly, vendors in the current year are certainly welcome to come back the following. And rarely, but occasionally, there's a reason why somebody might move or retire or other such things. So yes, we had 2 new vendors this year.
What do they bring?
Well, the Greenman Farm is from Holt, and they're a full range Michigan produce farm and bring a wide variety. Another new vendor this year is one of our um, new on the horizon urban farms named Floodplain Farm, and they have land right on the east side of the city of Lansing, and they've been bringing a variety, some fabulous garlics, some greens, some herbs.
How have I not heard of them? I'm going to have to find out more.
You can go track it down and do some video.
Yeah. You're listening to WLNZ LCC Radio 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. Do you have, as a result of the change with the new cottage law that allows some home sort of vendors to have baked goods and other things that are considered generally regarded as safe, that you don't have to worry as much about, they don't have to be done in a certified kitchen? Do you have you seen an explosion of those kinds of products?
Well, honestly, when that bill became, when it was passed and became public knowledge, we had what I would call a minor explosion of applicants. And that's a little different than having, part of the fun of maintaining and nurturing a farm market is to maintain a balance of goods so that not only the vendors but the customers are happy to keep coming back. And honestly, we have a little bit of a ratio of fresh food, processed food, baked goods, because again, we're limited to about 22 spaces. So quite frankly, we had huge interest with cottage food people and not room really to accommodate them. We do our best to refer them and find other places that might welcome them. It's more younger or expanding markets.
Do you have any cottage food products there?
At this point, our policy is such that an existing vendor who wanted to add cottage food products to their booth are welcome to, but we're not accepting any cottage food per se.
I was interested the other day to read a statistic that 90 cents out of every food dollar spent in the United States is spent on processed foods and fresh food, which is kind of an explanation of why we're getting so chubby. I think.
Would you, if you could, this is not maybe a very fair question, but if you had twice the size, you probably have twice the number of vendors. There's that kind of demand? Is there a demand?
We've done a slow grow. It's really interesting. That's a great question because, when we began in 2004, we were one of 3 in the county farmers markets. And we began literally with 4 farmers and a handful of sous. And we have, which is wonderful. And we have done a slow grow to have about 22 booths right now. And that's been really interesting to watch because there is a value in building relationships and building patron customer base that allows vendors to have stability. And I wouldn't immediately double.
Yeah, I can see why, because then the vendors, the profit margin would fall.
Yeah, you have to kind of build
Keeping
that reputation. And so we have loyal customers and we have returning vendors, and I think I think we've got a good thing going. So.
And there are so many new farmers markets opening up as well that you have to be careful that you don't outstrip the number of people who are willing to take the time to go out and shop at farmers.
I believe right now we're up to 18 in the county. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Which is amazing and really nice for all of us to have a market to stop by on our way home. That's true.
I know they did the Kensington market study years ago, and one of the questions that I've always had, and it's been a concern, you're an urban market serving a population that sometimes seems a lot of people who go on their way home from a job downtown kind of thing. They stop into the market on their way home. Is it hard to keep prices affordable for the people in the community itself?
The vendors seem to manage that very well.
Do they?
We have nothing to do with that. However, what our part in that is to be very straightforward about why we're there. Our intent from the beginning was to provide access to a part of the city that had limited access to food. And so our prevailing reason to this day of being there is to do that. And then we love that anybody else stops by as well. And so I think that we are known, and honestly, through dot surveys that we routinely dip and ask people the simple question, what is your zip code? Where are you from? That we are holding at about half of our patrons being of the zip code that we're seated in. And so I believe that vendors acknowledge that through their pricing footprint.
Yeah.
And keep it affordable.
I know a lot of times
Yeah.
if you compare prices there to Meridian, for example, you paid the sort of Okemos premium for some of your. I guess that's probably
Not unlike other venues.
I know.
I was going to point out, as a resident of the East Side, I was really excited when they expanded to allow EBTs. And I think that has helped immensely in expanding the access, particularly in that community.
And they were one of the first in the state.
Absolutely. And the Allen Street Market has just done a phenomenal job reaching into the community, not only in making sure people know about the farmers market, but you've got the cart that goes through the neighborhood now, selling the food.
Is that from Urbandale?
That's from Urbandale, and that's grown right there in the neighborhood. And that's, I think those are the ways that you engage the community in locally grown food in a really interesting, intricate sort of way that works. So.
That's really true. That way back visioning in 2003, how to move our food-related programs forward, included how are we going to build interrelated community-based programs, and that is part of on our horizon to keep going. We started with what still exists once a week as our little bread basket food pantry. It's simply bread donated, and 80 to 90 families every week take advantage of that. We moved on. The market was the next project. Our garden house, which is really educationally driven around teaching people to grow their own food, is down in Hunter Park in collaboration with the city. And popping up, it's really turned out to be good. And it really got its roots down, because that's been firmly in place for a number of years. And now what's coming up on the horizon is this thing we're calling the Allen Street Food Hub, which will be kind of the finish of connecting all of these food-related projects together. Urbandale Farms certainly came out of, that is not our project, but came out of close collaboration with food-related projects.
That's Laura Dillon out of the university. But you have spacing back now to open the food hub where you're going to be really sort of this sort of regional center.
It's very exciting.
Wow. I mean, those are the things that the food folk around town have been talking about for years. The need to have an opportunity to have that kind of warehousing ability.
Tell us a little bit about what's going to be in there, because I think a lot of people won't know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, food hub by itself, everything has a different meaning. What's local, what's a hub. But what we're visioning and what we're in the middle of working on, actually, construction has begun, is we've amazingly acquired about 5,000 square feet right in the back of the building that we've been seated in, and right in next to the parking lot where the market has always been. So it's just been very, very wonderful to find that small manageable space. It will house a commercial kitchen that will be not only a place to skill people toward food entrepreneurship, business skills related to food manufacturing, but it will be available for people nights and weekends to lease, who are ready in their food business dreams to not quite have their own kitchen, but ready to lease one for food production. There will be a space in the center of this that will allow for the continuation of the market year-round, which we're really pleased. We'll maintain fresh food on a smaller basis because so many people have come finally after all of these years to consider us a viable food source. And we have a lot of loyal people coming and shopping the market, so that's exciting. Maybe 10 vendors inside. We're building 5 segmented walk-in coolers, 8x8, that will be available for storage for people who either are growing their own food at home and need really a root cellar. It's that concept, and lets them extend eating what they've grown in their own homes into the season. And also some will be available for commercial growers, meaning that, for however they're going to grow and then store food, that they would be able to extend also their selling season.
Will you be collaborating with the MSU Product Center with food entrepreneurs who are coming out of those programs?
Well, I would think that may be a good partnership. There are many people all around seeking kitchen space now. And in our earlier work, almost 2 years ago with the health department, as we were laying plans on how best to proceed, we were receiving some training on how best to plan this kitchen that it would accommodate everything. We were told, I remember hearing from them, oh my gosh, they're so frustrated with turning people away who are inquiring on where they could possibly find a space that could be licensed.
Some of them ended up in Hart, Michigan. That's where the product center put up its, and that's a long way
It's
to
a
go.
bit of a commute.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
And the hall supplies up.
It's the hall supplies. It's into the product.
This is going to fill a niche, and I think the demand will be huge for it.
Yeah. This is just a wonder. I mean, Bill was saying earlier before the show that this kinds of services that emanate and that have expanded out of the market are just enormous. I mean, the community, the support, it extends so far beyond foods. The spin-off is just tremendous.
Yes.
Brings people together, gets neighbors talking, provides informal opportunities for people to collaborate. I mean, there's no downside. These are one of these wonderful projects to which I see no downside.
Well, that's great. Yes, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure 6 months out of the year to do the outdoor market, which will always be that. And now, look, in the near future, we have, not this fall, but the fall of 2013, we intend to extend the market and continue that placemaking. That's really what we're talking about.
One last topic I'd like to get into is what the rules are for vendors at your market in terms of does all the food that they bring have to be stuff that they've grown themselves, and what are some of those rules that because this is something that people who frequent, but they sometimes they don't know the difference between a city market and a farmer's market, and they don't know, they just assume everything there is grown by the person organically in their backyard, and what are the rules at Balance Street?
Sure, I'll tell you about that first, and then I'm just so glad to tell you that I'm glad there's such a diversity in our markets, because ultimately I love to introduce shoppers to vendors, which is the name of the game, right? You get to talk to that person. Our particular policy is that it is all Michigan food, and that 75% of what is represented at the booth must be grown by the vendor. 25% is allowed to come in as long as it is clearly identified who grew it and what location. And of course, that would be Michigan. You find a lot of variance throughout different markets about, the policies, but that is how we're running now. We have a wide variety of growing practices, from certified organic to people who have scrupulous organic practices, to more backyard, larger growing with minimal pesticides, and we have 2 conventional farmers.
See, that's interesting. That's an interesting mix.
And we've deliberately created that so that there's something for everybody. And that is funny that people will come up and say to me, Holly, which ones are this or which ones are that? And it's a perfect opportunity to say, let's go talk.
Yes.
Let's go walk around, and I'll introduce you, because people are not accustomed often to speaking to the person who's grown that food.
Earl Threadgold, who is the former market manager at Oakland out of Meridian Market, the late Earl, he had been in extension, and he was one of those people who used a pesticide if he had to, but tried not to. One of those, and he always appreciated the fact that he could talk to people about that, because he felt that was an important part of educating people there, rather than lose a whole crop. But that he was the kind of person you could trust to use the least possible and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of education that happens just naturally, and there's a lot of passion, as we all know, and a lot of different beliefs on food. Oh yes. It's quite a stew pot.
We stratify by food nowadays. That's how you tell. That's how you tell your class in life. Whether you're the Wonder Bread or the brioche.
It's really something, isn't it? So we've tried to craft, and I think we've done it fairly well, a marketplace that everyone feels comfortable, and that there might be something for everybody there, and that certainly everyone is welcome.
Transparency, to me, seems to be the issue, because I just don't think it's fair to come to a market and not know that the vegetables you're buying are off the same truck that stopped at Myers on the way. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's, to me, the big issue. As long as
there's
it's
some trust involved, and I've been to a lot of markets across the state, and most of them don't have your policies.
That's right. Yeah. And they're not as
They're
upfront.
a little bit more obscure where things are growing, frankly.
Yeah. Well, again, I agree with you. Transparency is the name of the game, and I like that there are not cookie cutter markets, and I like that it should be an experience whichever market you walk into. But again, you really do need to have a way to hear either from the managing group or best from the vendors themselves.
Well, it's a throwback to being able to talk to the person who grows your food.
Yes.
It's quite an unusual thing. You think about it.
And it's
kind of cool.
in this era. I mean, because trust me, people out there, if you knew some of the practices that go on at the industrial organic farms out on the West Coast, you would not be willing to pay that premium for the organic label Sometimes it's much better to talk to the grower and ask them about their enterprise. You'd be surprised to find out. I mean, there's many practices. Many of us who are opposed to industrial agriculture learned about the way some of these things are going. And farmers markets are the place where the rubber really meets the road and you can talk to people.
There is some great conversation, and I love the public education because it will happen every year, and I welcome the question in May, where are the watermelons?
Yes.
Because it's an opportunity to have a discussion.
Guatemala.
That's where they
Somewhere,
are.
roughly.
Or they're on their way, is what I usually say.
I was reading the LSJ a year ago, I think it was, and somebody was saying, how come there are tomatoes here in March at the farmer's market? I mean, downtown in Lansing. And I thought, first of all, it's not a farmer's market, it's a city market. Second of all, and the guy, somebody says, well, it can't possibly be, well, there they are. And somebody else says, well, but they grow them in hothouses right here in Michigan. No, they don't. Those are from Chile.
They could.
Yeah, they could,
But they don't.
but they're not. It's way too expensive. So yeah, I mean, it's you have to talk to people.
Sure, and actually that whole hothouse or hoop house, emerging popularity is really shifting our conversation.
Bonnie, I'm really disappointed you didn't bring some of the produce from your hoop house, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You could have shared.
Where's our dinner?
I have heirloom tomatoes coming out of the wazoo right
Do you?
now. Yes,
Great, I'll take some.
yes, it's the wazoo heirloom.
You're going to get one of those carts again in a horse and buggy and ride up and down the
I
street.
think that would be a nice touch, wouldn't it?
That's where I first got introduced to fruit and vegetables. One went by our house when I was a kid.
Oh, now see, when I was a kid,
That was pretty neat.
So you
we
love
did
that.
have the
And the guy was a
vegetable
banterer. He had a scam run. I mean, from the standpoint of selling things, he was a great salesman.
Now, see, I'm so old that I remember not only the vegetable vendor, but the guy who came by with the cart where he ground your knives for you, the scissors grinder, and the people who collected paper and rags, the paper and rags guy, our own sort of neighborhood recycler. Maybe we should need to get back to him.
We had a street sweeper.
Yeah, so do we.
Somebody with a broom going down
A
our
person. Yeah, not a
Bay City,
person.
Michigan.
Here's where we really make the cutoff. Now, did you ever see the little monkey with the cup and the
Oh yeah, I did actually.
Me
Yeah,
too.
yep. And
Hey,
the
see,
guy,
we're really old.
the guy bringing a burro that you could sit on and have your photo taken.
Oh, now that wasn't in the neighborhood, but I did do that.
You guys would have eaten the burro
Yeah, that's
after
true.
you grew up.
The monkey was an endangered species. In my neighborhood.
I might point out that I'm not as old as both of you, but I do remember the monkey with the
No
organ
one
grinder.
can-
thing.
Oh,
So,
you do?
Yes, I did see that when I was a kid. I think it was at one of the fairs. So
Oh no, this was coming down
Can't
the
go
street.
there. You can't talk about things in
No,
slide fairs.
Yeah,
no,
no,
I
fairs.
grew up in the traditional suburban neighborhood, so I didn't see any of that stuff. But we did have a milkman that delivered
Oh, we had the
that was
milk.
locally produced.
The dairy was next door, which meant we got all the big rats.
Oh, wow.
They liked that milk.
Ooh.
The trucks,
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, they were big. They were really healthy guys. You had to come in at twilight because they were like small dogs in the back. And not as friendly. Not as those skinny tails.
Holly, again, I like to ask somewhat unfair questions, and I told you I wouldn't, but it seems that you've got such an incredible program, and to me it seems that ought to be replicated
Yes.
in other areas
Yes.
of the city. Why can't we get that to happen?
Well, actually, there are several very exciting markets on the horizon coming up. The South Side has a good market that is, I think, 4 years old. Don't quote me. Northwest is right behind on its heels with a 3-year-old market. They've both changed locations for the good this season, and I think they're going to stay put. So I will say, we share so much through the years of our best practices and whatever people can take that works for their particular situation. Please do. But I believe the reason that Elm Street Farmers Market is as unique and charming as it is that it is truly place-based. And even within areas of our city, the east side is the east side, and the west side has a different flavor, and the south side. And so I think we're seeing the emergence of similarly suited to their neighborhoods, markets coming up. I sure hope so. We support them in the way that we can.
Have you seen maybe not an explosion, but a growth in home gardens because of what you do?
Well, the Garden Project, give them credit. They've been around a long, long time, and I know that in the last several years, I think the community gardens in our area have doubled. It's been phenomenal. And then parallel that with all the work my coworkers have done for years now with that garden house. And yeah, I mean, I know we get direct feedback that people are interested in learning how to grow their own food. And then we have a position right now for the summer, kind of a visiting garden doctor, where if they're stuck in their backyard with a phenomena or a dilemma. This woman can go right out there and sight on, kind of discuss problems, and that's a
pretty cool
great
idea.
support, So we get a lot of feedback that people are they're willing to try, and there's a bit of a learning curve, But yeah, I think that they have increased, and that's this spin around to this kitchen and the hub where people can conceivably use the kitchen to preserve their food. They can use those storage bins to store it for longer, and I think we're going to have a lot more to talk about in a year when the hub's opened about all those folks.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We want to thank Holly Hamill for coming in and talking with us. She has to go home because she has a friend hiding on her porch now, or hopefully not breaking in.
If in,
and she needs to go and rapidly go and take care of let her friend in and enjoy the rest of the evening. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's been delightful. All right, bye-bye.
We are now joined by Todd Haywood, who those of you who have gone to LansingOnlineNews.com will see is wearing his blue gloves, his blue latex gloves here. It's hard to see on the radio, I must admit. That's because earlier today he Facebooked that he has pink eye, and I suggested that he wear gloves, and now he looks like he's sort of rabid TSA.
I know. He was putting them on.
Can I just point out that you didn't suggest. You said you will wear gloves. There was no suggestion.
This was
involved.
A serial killer coming in, when he's at the front door out there.
Todd is newly returned from a long stint in Washington, D.C. How'd the dogs do without you?
They were fine. They love staying with my friend Ian, so they didn't miss me at all. I, on the other hand, was devastated without them.
As I am. That's one of the things I hated about when you're going on the road for travel is, it's always, my motto is it's always a good day when you can pet a dog.
I agree.
That's all I ask out of life. So you were down at the International AIDS Conference.
Correct.
And was that quite it must have been a sort of an overwhelming experience just personally to be involved with all of this. Things you like, things you didn't like, all sorts of things happening.
Well, first of all, let's sort of frame out what this thing looks like. We're talking about a conference that's this year attendance was about 25,000 people from all over the world. The sessions, the book for the sessions was literally an inch and a half thick, and the supplementary breaking sessions was about the size of a usual program. So we were talking, you're talking about probably 4,000 or 5,000 individual sessions of information.
Where did they even house them?
They were in multiple different rooms throughout the entire Washington Convention Center, which is in itself a huge facility. I can't tell you how many times I got lost in there. So I think it's really important to acknowledge the immensity of what was going on.
I did web cities in that convention center. I did get lost.
So it's easy. So taking the immensity of what we're talking about here, I think it's important to frame it like that because you can really only walk away with a sense of what happened because there were multiple tracks.
Right.
And you didn't really get to follow one track or another if you were there as a reporter like myself. I sort of do general reporting on HIV, so there's a really interesting study that was released about medication use over here, and there was a piece about international activities on HIV criminalization over here. Which one do I go to?
Yeah.
Or one on new prevention techniques in Uganda, which may not sound like that's particularly interesting until you realize that the federal government is paying for it. And part of that is the whole anti-homosexuality legislation that's going on in Uganda. So there's all these layers that you have to sort of sort through. So that said, here's what I came away with. Just turning the tide on AIDS and creating an AIDS-free generation were the sort of messages. And I think it's really important to recognize the frame there. An AIDS-free generation. Not an HIV-free generation. An AIDS-free generation. And what they're talking about is using antiretroviral medications to suppress viral replication in the body to prevent the body from becoming sick from opportunistic infections, which define an AIDS diagnosis.
Right.
So we're not really talking about ending the HIV epidemic, which is what was sort of presented in the mainstream media throughout the conferences.
How
We're
it's
at a point where we can
interpreted,
end it.
yes.
No, that's not really what they're talking about, boys and girls. And taking that away as a person living with HIV and a person who knows lots of people living with HIV, I'm a little concerned with some of the messaging.
I am too, because really, this is an expensive cocktail. You told me that your medications alone are over $40,000.
They've actually dropped down.
Oh,
They're
it's a
now
bargain.
only about $35,000.
Bargain.
Maybe I'll start taking them just for
Basically,
that.
that's right.
But the reality is, it should be a thoughtful, considered, and serious decision about when or if to go on them, not just automatically, gee, everybody ought to start taking these very expensive medications that have lots of side effects, just as a sort of prophylaxis. And then it seems to me that benefits the drug companies more than it may the population.
Well, let's sort of back up a little bit on that. The recommendation now is that anybody who tests positive for HIV should automatically start the medications.
Right then.
Right then. And that's a HRSA recommendation, the health.
And that's because they say you will then not spread it to others as easily.
That's exactly it. It's a public health message.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the science behind it. And the science says...
For the individual
for the
who has
individual.
the virus.
The science
Yeah.
says that a person initiating antiretroviral treatment before their CD4s, the blood cells that the virus attacks the most, drop below 500, starting treatment before then has no outcome different than starting it after 500.
For the person with the
For the
virus.
person with
They're
the
not going
virus.
to get any healthier or stay healthy any longer.
Correct.
Yes.
What we're seeing, though, is that public health and doctors are telling people to go on the medications to prevent the transmission of the virus, which is a good thing.
That's not
Don't-
a bad thing.
don't misunderstand me.
No, I agree.
But there are other ways to prevent the transmission of the virus.
Safe
That-
sex.
Yeah, safer sex. Having relationships with people who already are infected.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of options there that are not being discussed. We're only looking at biochemical intervention.
Yeah.
And that's where we come to PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis, which was just approved by the FDA just before the conference opened. And this is using the drug Truvada, which is 2 anti-HIV drugs in one pill daily for people at high risk for HIV. Now, what they don't talk about is that you have to take the pill and still use condoms. And the studies that have been done that this decision was based on, particularly the heterosexual study, which I have the most problem with, which came out of Africa, only 27% of the enrolled couples that were involved in this study admitted to having unprotected sex before the study started. And by the time the study ended, it was less than 20%.
So
they were
direction.
increasing the safer sex.
Yes.
So you couldn't disentangle the impact of the drug from the impact of condom use.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I think that nuance has been lost in the conversations happening in the United States about PrEP. Does that mean that I would say don't ever use PrEP? No. I mean, I think that that's a discussion that has to happen with a person with their healthcare provider, but they have to understand that it's not as effective as it's being painted to be right now because we can't disentangle. So there's a problem with that. And I'm also concerned about the cost. That's one of the drugs I'm on, and that one's about $14,000 a year.
And that is. I mean, my concern was I'm of the generation where I even had an OBGYN that was no longer my OBGYN when he said, if you don't go on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, I won't be your OBGYN. And I said, with that kind of attitude, I can tell you already you're not my OBGYN. And he said, but you're just ignoring the science. And I said, no, I've actually read the science, and it's just not clear yet. There aren't enough full-scale studies to know for sure. There's a lot of little anecdotal studies. And sure enough, there were dangers in that medication. And you've experienced side effects. And
sure.
It was very hard to get used to the medication, as I remember.
Yeah, it took
a transition.
Later this month, it'll be a year that I've been on the meds. And it took probably a good 6 months before my body was really adapted to the meds.
Yeah.
And I still, you have me on video choking on one of the pills.
Yeah.
And I do that at least twice or 3 times a week. And sometimes it actually causes me to vomit because the pills they're horse pills. Yeah.
And it's such a lucrative profit center for the pharmaceutical companies that they have such a vested interest in wanting to see it adopted in every shape and form for all sorts of protocols.
Absolutely. And that's, the other issue that we have to talk about is if you're not ready to go on these medications because they do require commitment, you have to take them every day.
Yes.
within a certain time frame of the same time each time. It's usually 3 hours on either side. Or you run the risk of developing a resistant virus.
Yes, you could actually be
And-
causing more problems.
Exactly. And we already know in Michigan that about 7 to 9% of new infections that are identified through genotyping are actually resistant to one of the drugs.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Well, we've seen with tuberculosis, for example, that it's been harbored and the pathogens become more dangerous, primarily coming out of homeless populations where they're given medication, but because of one problem or another, they may not be able to stay on it regularly, or they have personal issues that make that difficult. And so what they do is they become an incubator for a more virulent strain.
And that's what we see with the medications is that as long as you're taking them properly, it suppresses the virus. But as soon as you stop taking it, boom, the virus explodes in the body.
So I think anyone that takes a daily medication knows that how difficult it is to take it every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just because
It
of
sounds easy.
just because of who we are. I mean,
Right.
I'm always forgetting.
Yeah.
Or just, oops, I forgot.
And this isn't a drug that I can forget.
Right. You can't forget.
Right. I
Absolutely.
can forget to take my aspirin, but you can't forget to take it.
And I'm proud to say that I've only missed it once.
Wow.
That's amazing in a year.
And the only reason why I missed it is because I ordered the new prescription and fell asleep before I got up to go pick it up at the drugstore.
It was too late.
And when I woke up, it was closed, so I didn't have any pills. So when I picked them up the next morning, I said, I didn't take my dose last night. What do I do? And the pharmacist looked it up and said, okay, look, take the dose now and then get back on your regular cycle. So that was it.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Todd Awood. I would like to switch gears now, Todd. It's sort of a clumsy switch, but then before we run out of time, I really want to talk a little bit about the upcoming primary tomorrow. I don't want to forget that we are here on the night before primary night. And I have to tell you the reason I know this. I still have a landline. And when people called, as they did, they called my husband today and they said, is Bunny Buckarocks there? Box of Rocks there? And he said, Box of Rocks? And I thought, must be another one of those people who doesn't really know me. Is Bunny Box of Rocks? I'm thinking of changing my name now to Bunny Box of Rocks.
I kind of like that.
I kind of like that.
I voted for it. As soon as she posted it on Facebook, I said, I like
Box
it.
of Rocks.
Box of Rocks.
Box of Rocks.
And then I got another one where I have caller ID, right? And I could see it was Walt Sword. It's been so many times, right? And I figured, oh, this will be fun because he's probably, and he's a really dedicated campaigner.
Sure
I'm
is.
sure he's calling everybody. So he called, and I hear him say, "Is Mrs. Howard there?" Well, nobody calls me Mrs. Howard, right? And I said, "Okay, Walt, look, you can save time. Hang up now. It's Bunny Buckaroo. I'm already in the bag. You can." So I knew it was a reminder. It's going to be a big day tomorrow.
I think it is. So where do we want to start?
Where do we want to start?
What races do we want to talk about?
Probably the most contentious that I know of is the Susan Schmidt-Sam Singh race in East Lansing. Because I don't think there's anybody who feels that they'd be a loser if the other person won. I mean, I think both people like both of them a lot.
I do. And I think there's a real structural battle going on there, I think, between Susan, who I think sort of represents sort of the Mark Meadows sort of establishment of East Lansing, and I think Sam represents a more youthful, energetic energy to the city. I think both of them would represent the area phenomenally.
I'm sorry to see them pitted against each other, to tell you the truth.
I'm glad I don't have to choose, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't get a chance to vote in that race either, but boy, it's interesting to me. Although the funny thing is, both sides keep sending me emails, right, that are things that are going to persuade me. I was really liking Sam until he sent me the one about how the Chamber of Commerce endorsed him, and I'm like, what's wrong with Sam? So see, you have to be careful, Sam. Every time you put out something like that, there's a group of us who go, Chamber of Commerce.
There weren't the sort of really intense races for me living in Lansing. No. Pretty simple.
Pretty simple?
Ingham County Drain Commission.
Yeah.
That has to be one of the nastiest battles that I've seen in some years.
It was incredibly intense.
Yeah.
And I think it harkens back, frankly, to the early years of our nation when we used pamphlets to campaign for.
Pamphleteers,
right?
Yes. I have to admit, I am one of the few, probably one of very few, who actually read each page of the multi-page things that were sent out by both candidates.
They were really into each other's face.
Absolutely.
They were.
Absolutely were. And I think what we're really seeing come to the forefront here is sort of two political dynasties.
Oh.
Lindemann
Past and
represents
future?
no, I don't think either one of them is past and future. Lindemann has his own sort of following, and Grebner has his, and they've never liked each other.
You could see the animosity.
Yeah, and that animosity, I think, is finally boiled out to where it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see the outcome of that.
What's your prediction on who'll win?
I think Pat Lindemann's going to win. I mean, I got to be honest, I'm troubled with a lot of the ethics complaints and the ethical legal issues that are involved here. But there just simply is not a better qualified candidate for running the Drain Commission. What he has done with that office in terms of addressing water issues in this community.
Yeah.
I mean, the tollgate drains scenario has become a world leader. I mean, we have people from all over the world come here to learn how he did that.
Oh, I used to walk over there all the
gorgeous
time. I drive over there just to walk there.
And I'd like to see it replicated many more times in
So would
Lansing.
And I've actually I did a video, an audio video thing with Pat where he walked me through it. So there's pictures of each stage of it. He talks about what it means. I would encourage people to pull that up on YouTube. It's an amazing explanation of how the system works.
Well, I have to be careful because and to be transparent, Mark Grebner just loathes me ever since I ran on the Green Party ticket. He actually stops my former campaign manager on the street and screams at him every once in a while. So, but I've always thought it was kind of amusing that he gets so agitated about it. He feels I single-handedly cost Al Gore the election. I keep reminding him about Florida.
Shush.
And what those libertarians, the libertarian vote was actually equally as high.
Well, I have to point out, too, that Mark doesn't particularly like me either because I do a
of
lot of theater, and Tom Klunzinger is a friend of mine, and Tom Klunzinger is a Republican, and so therefore I must be the spawn of the devil because I've hung out with Republicans.
Well, true.
In a lot of ways, if Pat wins, I think what came out during this race about some of the more questionable things he did, which in a lot of ways were small potatoes, but they could grow into big potatoes.
Yes, and I think the AG investigation means it is growing into big potatoes.
Yep. And those were disturbing to me, too. I thought, dang, why would you do that?
That's always a surprise, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll just drop some stuff off by my house.
Yeah, boy.
He can't do stuff like that.
No, you have to be scrupulous. But at the same time, I don't know what would Mark run for if this job does not become his? What would be next on his agenda?
I think he's done.
He's
done?
finished. I think, just
Okay,
consulting business.
This was the last gasp then for elected office. That's going to be very interesting. He's now gone off the county commissioner's roles, and this was his choice to run in this race. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I know he's making a major push. I think he lost the dog liver vote when he said something about the research animals, selling the animals from the dog pound to the research, and he said, why would anybody care, basically?
I remember that. I was...
and
long memory on
dogs. And he loves his dog.
Yeah.
I mean, he's always been
adores his dog.
Yeah.
Mark Grebner is one of the most colorful political people in this area. As a reporter, I love Mark when it comes to commentary.
You don't get spin. You get actual real quotes.
And
guttural.
Yes.
It's definitely guttural. My new editor has called him bombastic.
True.
Which is good. I
That's
like
good.
that.
Bombastic is good.
I think good political commentary requires some bombastic commentary.
I am frustrated at the PRization of absolutely everything.
Yep.
It seems that you cannot have an honest discussion anymore about anything. I was noticing today, just to talk to you about how bad it's getting. Poor little Gabby Douglas, right? Our wonderful gymnast who becomes this absolute star. And what does Fox News go after her for? And in addition to her hair, her costume, her uniform was not red, white, and blue. It was not patriotic enough, as if she chose it. And they did. They pretended that she chose it. They said, well, it was her prerogative to wear that. No, it wasn't.
No, it's not.
No.
Yeah, you don't show up in anything that's not approved by the Olympics.
I don't think so.
Can I just ask the question, Bunny? What the hell are you doing listening to Fox News or watching Fox
News? I am not watching it. I am getting it repeated to me by people whose hair goes on fire because they're the ones who are at the early, we have them scouring it for us.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because, there have been studies that have shown that Fox News watchers are dumber than anybody else, so.
Well, one of my more frustrating things is I never know which person to vote for in the judicial races.
Yeah.
I had to call.
No, I do too. I have a lawyer friend I call. And, he gives me sort of the inside skinny as well, like, boy, he's a real jerk in court, or he's slow in filing things. And, that's what you really, I mean, it's very hard to get information on those races. I don't know how you really become an informed voter.
And I think part of what's frustrating about that is they're not allowed to make any statements about political philosophy or positions or, I agree with you that it's very troubling, but I actually am the guy that when they come knocking at my door, I'll actually spend time talking.
And that's who I voted for. I'm not going to say who it was, but I voted for someone who came knocking at my door.
Do you know what they'd have to go through to get to my door?
Yeah, but that's the only person for any race that came to my door.
That's what's so troubling. Yeah,
but they also know
I can tell you,
the hammer down on a vote.
Yeah, but I can tell you that I have, in terms of people knocking on my door, Andy Shore has done just an amazing job.
I take that back. He was there so long ago, and I got a yard sign. Oh yeah, he was there. So, he's been at everybody in our neighborhood twice, I think.
He's been to my door, or somebody from his camp has been at my door at least 8 times.
Wow.
He's
got a hard race.
He does have a hard race. It is a tight race, and I don't know enough about Griffin Rivers, and frankly, I haven't been able to find him. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to vote for you because all you did was send me mail.
I don't think any of us is going to be voting in this primary, although I did once vote in a primary, so I keep getting all this information. But I've had about 15 surveys, and am I going to vote for Peter Hoekstra or Clark Durant? Who do you think is going to win in that one? Is it Hoekstra's in the bag?
No, actually, the Tea Party thing that we were talking about last time I was on.
Yeah, right. We were talking
Gary
about
Glenn dropped out, and he passed his Tea Party endorsement on to Clark Durant. Yeah. The Tea Party has picked that up. I think Durant's going to end up.
I think he will too. I think he could. I mean, I do see the Tea Party is still on the ascendancy. We've seen it in the race down in Texas. I mean, it's
and we saw it in Indiana as well.
Yeah.
Right. And then in general, he's going to have some baggage.
Yeah, he'll have a lot of baggage.
Whoa.
But I mean, not that Pete Hoekstra
was
going to come in after that. I mean, Pete Hoekstra carried a mansion with him, so I don't think we could have.
Baggage is about equal in this case.
Does he have a dressage horse?
I don't know.
The top of the car.
And I do think, as long as we want to talk about sort of some national, I think down in the 6th we may see Jack Hogendijk come very close to upsetting Upton down in the 6th.
Really?
I really do. He just picked up the National Tea Party endorsement today, and that was.
I think that's going to be interesting to watch because I think that's the sleeper for the fall. Yeah. If those folks are still energized. However, I think there'll be a little bit of what you would call your basic right-wing backlash now that we know the 3 names. Of course, they always have 3 names, which is Wade Michael Page is the shooter at the Sikh temple. From a band called End Apathy. Well, he sure ended apathy. This is just getting to be completely out of control. We're seeing these kinds of major mass murders occurring with alarming frequency. It's almost to the point now where we have to get a special channel just to report that news.
Well, and I want to bring sort of something back to the local race on that. In the 68th, we have a gentleman named Ted Odell running for the Democratic nomination, who is an openly gay man, or supposedly openly gay. Now, if you could tell if you looked at his website, because he doesn't say that.
Not that open.
He talked about being a member of the Masons, but he doesn't talk about being gay. But the only endorsement that he's received really was from the organization that he runs, which is a jobs coalition that wanted to bring casinos to Lansing, and from the National Rifle Association.
Now there's
which he posted on his Facebook about how proud he was to accept the endorsement from them.
And
somebody asked him.
Casinos, but no mention of LGBT.
No.
Huh.
But somebody asked him on his Facebook, what do you think about, semi-automatic weapons being controlled after the Colorado shooting? He wouldn't answer. I've asked him, as an openly gay man, and I've sent him 2 emails now and received no response from him. I've asked him, as an openly gay man, did you know that the National Rifle Association in May of 2011 fired their law firm because they wouldn't defend the Defense of Marriage Act, and that every one of the board members has rabidly anti-gay stands? So did you know that when you accepted this endorsement? And by the way, did they know that you were gay when you sought their endorsement? And if not, how are you fulfilling the obligation of being an openly gay candidate? And he's not answered any responses, replied to any of those questions.
Wow. That's disturbing.
It is troubling. And, Brady Schlickinger from one of the gun groups is openly gay, and he's a libertarian. I don't have a problem philosophically with the idea of somebody carrying a gun. It's against me personally. I would never own a gun, but hey, some people, it's their thing. But there has to be a conversation about it. And Mr. Adele just doesn't want to have that conversation.
It sounds like it. I mean, so what does he serve at his little campaign rallies? Chick-fil-A? I mean, geez.
I don't know. I'd like to know.
Yeah.
But, the good news is that I think he may actually just barely place above Harold Cleveland in the race.
Well, thank you to Todd Haywood for joining us and giving us the wrap-up on the International AIDS Conference down in Washington, D.C. We'll be back next Monday night. You've been listening to Lansing Online News Radio with Bonnie and Bill. This is WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan, LCC radio. And let's see if light went well. Yes.